Welcome to the For Everyday Leaders podcast. Brandon Faust, Alex Holt here with you today. Alex, tell our listeners what this podcast is all about.
Yeah, this podcast is all about helping people lead in the everyday spaces and moments of life. And today with us on the show, we have Ryan Crozier. Ryan is the founder of Agency Boon, a digital marketing agency helping people do good online while investing their profits into charities in Romania. Ryan's also the founder of Good-preneurs. They invest in leaders, and their mission is to change the nation of Romania. Ryan currently lives in Romania, is married, and they have a wonderful son.
I'm so excited for you guys to join us in this conversation. Before we get to the conversation with Ryan, we want to let you know that this episode of the For Everyday Leaders podcast is sponsored by the Liston Lodge. We actually just had an event there.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah,
the Everyday
so
Leader
good.
event series. We're going to be back there January 30th.
Mark your calendars.
Mark
right
your
now.
calendars. Liston Lodge is an event venue located in Hendricks County, just 35 minutes from downtown Indianapolis. The estate was a former 22,000 square foot gorgeous private residence, but it's now a unique venue for events that features elaborate woodwork, unique chandeliers, a cozy and homey environment, and beautiful secluded grounds. So whether it's for a special event, corporate event, or a wedding, visit listonlodge.com. That's listonlodge.com.
Now let's get into our conversation with Ryan.
Ryan Crozier, welcome to the show. We're so glad to have you. Where are you joining us from today, by the way?
I am in Bucharest, Romania, in Eastern Europe.
Wow.
So, yeah, I've done the math. It's like a 7-hour time difference from here in Eastern Standard Time. And Ryan and I met through a mutual friend. And you know, sometimes people are like, hey, you should meet this person. And they do an introduction and then no one responds. And you're like, well, this is awkward. Thanks for nothing. Ryan responded when we had a mutual friend, Adam, connected us. And it just so happened that Ryan was going to be coming back to the United States during the summer. And so we had the opportunity actually to spend time in this very office right here together, working through some of our frameworks. And for me, what was great about listening to Ryan's story, and I think everybody's going to enjoy in this conversation today, is his emphasis and desire to do good for others through business, through nonprofits, through ministry, through all domains of life. Yeah. And I found that to be really inspiring, very encouraging for a lot of the work that we're doing, investing in leaders. And I've just grown to really like Ryan. I think Ryan's awesome. He needs to be shared with the world. And so, Ryan, we're super, super glad that you could make some time in your schedule just to make some time to have this conversation, man.
Oh, I appreciate it. It's really an honor to be here and get to join you guys. And I love what you're doing there. So I love the podcast.
Thanks,
That's
Ryan.
awesome, man.
So tell us about, you're in Bucharest now, right? But tell us about where you kind of originally grew up. What was life like for Ryan growing up? And kind of how did you move to, what was those initial steps to kind of get you on a career path, Ryan?
Yeah, for me, I grew up in South Bend, Indiana, northern Indiana, and only child. My dad was in law enforcement. Mom was a computer programmer. So good middle-class family, I would say. And grew up going to church and involved in the kids ministry and then youth ministry, all that kind of stuff. But I really struggled at the same time. And I haven't shared this with too many people, but as I've been going through counseling the last few years, and I remember talking to my dad about the desire to commit suicide, like thinking about that. And when I was in 6th grade, it was just a really difficult year. I transitioned schools for 4th grade, and 6th grade was a horrible year. And I remember telling my dad that, and he was very concerned. And the next thing I know, and I never made this connection until, counseling helps you make these types of connections in life. And the next thing I know is my dad is asking me if I want to go on a missions trip to Romania. There's this opportunity. Now, we had never been on a missions trip. My dad had never gone, never wanted to go. I'm a big guy, and my dad was even bigger. So the idea of hopping on a plane for 9 hours or whatever it was, it sounds like torture, and going to an Eastern European country. So my dad had this desire to go. And so 12-year-old, I went with my dad here to Romania. So it was 1997. Wow. Communism had just ended in 89 here. And that experience, that missions trip, changed my life and changed the direction of my life. And so by the time I was 17, my family, we'd been over here numerous times, and I spent the summer here by myself. My parents are crazy enough to let me come over by myself.
Wow.
And it was that summer, right before your senior year of high school, everybody starts asking you, what are you going to do with your life? And you're supposed to have an answer.
Yeah.
And I turned to God that summer. I said, I need to know, what do you want me to do? And he just spoke to my heart that I was going to live in Romania one day.
Wow.
And when you're 17, one day means like tomorrow. Like, yes, I hear you, Lord. I'll drop out of high school and I'll move to Romania. I'll do it, And luckily I had wise people in my life. They're like, no, stay in high school and you need to go to college, that kind of thing. So yeah, I went to a Bible school up in Minneapolis, Minnesota to become a missionary to Romania because that was my only context of how you could live in Romania. That was my worldview at the time, right?
Yeah.
Like I didn't know much about expats or things like that, like how you could do that. And so, yeah, I went to Bible school and to move here has been my dream since I was 17.
Wow. It's so interesting. We've talked on the show sometimes how in certain episodes, it's like there are certain people, very few people who kind of have that straight line path of like, here's what I want to do and go and do this. But even when it's that straight line path, it isn't a straight line. And I think I even know, spoiler alert, I know that you didn't end up in Romania full time when you were 18 or 19 years old, right?
Yeah.
And then also people who are kind of like, where is it? What is it? What does it look like? And so kind of talk to us then, what came after those college years? You have this burning desire. And I think there are so many of us that probably have that thing that is just in our heart, whether it's, a certain country, a certain people group, a certain industry or a problem to solve in the world. It's just like burgeoning in your soul. And as a young person, it's like, all right, I gotta do this now, man. I gotta go do this. So kind of what came in those years as you were finishing up Bible school and all that stuff, man?
Yeah. One of the things that I think you're 100% right, although you know where God has called you to go and the destination of where you're supposed to be, it is rarely that straight line. And I think it's in those deviations, in those times where you feel like you can even feel like you're out of the will of God, right? At times that God is using that season to refine and prepare you for that final destination. College held different plans than I thought. Number one, my dad, who, passed away the first week of college.
Wow.
And so my mom went from, having two guys in the house to not only being empty nesters, but being a widow, and in a matter of a week. And so, it transformed things, and that only intensified my desire for it here and now, right? Like life feels shorter after an experience like that. And yet, God had different plans. So it was in that season that God really developed in me and revealed his Father's heart for me. And then I'm a son of God. And that I began to see that. So that was a milestone for sure.
Yeah.
The other is I was adamant that I was not going to get married at Bible school, not do the ring by spring, the bridal school type of jokes, all that stuff. I was like, pfft. And then wouldn't you know, God had other plans, right? And I got my wife Andrea at school, and God spoke to her heart that she was going to live in Romania one day, and had a peace about it. And so, but I was adamant about getting in and out of school quick. I graduated, I took a lot of credits, and I had to twist the registrar's arm to let me take, I don't know, it was like 26 credits in one semester, something like that.
Holy
I graduated in 3 years, tried to get in and out so I could get to Romania.
Yeah.
And plus my wife was on the 5-year plan. I was on the 3-year, so we got to graduate together. So that worked out well.
Yep.
And it made perfect sense to move to Romania right then. You're fresh out of school, newly married, let's go. And yet God had other plans. And that's how we ended up in Indianapolis. Lived in Avon for about 5 years or so.
West Side, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was living that Brownsburg life sometimes. I'd head up there. I like to, I lived in Avon, but would go up to Brownsburg some days, down to Plainfield the other. I like a little variety, some Hendricks County variety.
Absolutely. It's the best kind of variety.
It is a good variety.
I'm a Plainfield boy. Like I grew up, born and raised, so love the west side of Indy.
It was attractive to us. It was convenient because our school was in downtown Minneapolis. So when you wanted to go shopping, like Target type of thing, it was like you were driving out to a suburb.
Yeah.
So when I pulled in Avon, I was like, man, this place has everything, you know, like all the little things I need. And it's close to a big city. So we moved to Avon. Big step of faith. We had my wife, the only job we had when we moved was she worked part-time at Avon Starbucks.
Wow.
She transferred with Starbucks part-time. And we moved there, rented a little apartment behind the Walmart in Avon. And that was life. And within 2 weeks, we both had jobs there other than her Starbucks.
Wow.
So yeah. And what we looking back, you know, it was there, we were there 5-6 years. Man, we developed so many relationships with people, just amazing people, local churches we're involved in, our work, just amazing how God used that season to prepare us for this season. And we felt like, I mean, there was numerous times I felt like the vision was on the back burner and it was even hard to think about because I started thinking, you know, once we had a house and a dog and our friends were starting to have kids, it was like, man, we're living the American dream, but yet it wasn't enough. It didn't satisfy. And there was times where I struggled to even talk about Romania even more because I thought maybe it's not going to happen.
Yeah, Ryan, talk a little bit about that because I love what you said is that in those deviations, in those moments where we think it is like a straight and narrow path, we're headed toward the thing that we feel called to, there are those deviations. Talk about how you worked through that season of ending up in Romania because I think for a lot of people, they hit that first deviation or maybe that second one and they're like, it's just not going to happen. I guess this wasn't the dream that was meant to be and I'm going to give up
Maybe
on
I misread this situation or my heart's desire or God's plans or whatever. I think people face that all the time. And as opposed to letting that drop, how did that just kind of stay in the atmosphere for you, you know?
It's a good question. Yeah. I think there definitely was times where I never experienced those things, those thoughts. And I think I had dropped. I mean, there were some pieces where I kept it alive. I mean, I had on my wall of my office at the house, parking Romanians only, had a map of Romania up. I had some elements of Romania there, but it was almost painful sometimes to see them. And we started entering a season of strong discontentment. You know, we had all the things that we should make us happy. Things were going good. Our business was good. My wife loved her job. We had a great house. All that stuff was good. And yet we just were not, there was some discontentment. And we went and met with a pastor who we had known for many years, known us in school. And we're like, man, we don't know what it is. And we just feel this season where just something's not right. And he said the words, and I just started to weep. He said, do you think it's time for Romania? And I just started to cry in the middle of a stinking Starbucks in Minnesota. And that set us on the path. Within a few, you know, we scheduled a trip to come over and visit. It was my wife's first time, my first time being back here in 9 years, and things had radically changed. And we talked to friends that we had known here and mentors here in Romania. And they said, when do you want to come back? And I said, well, hopefully, you know, in 1 year from now, we'll be back here. And people are like, that's crazy. No way. You know, it takes 2 years at least to kind of wind down and fundraise and get over here. Yeah. But sure enough, God knew what he was doing. And a year later, we were here. We went back and hit the ground running, started a nonprofit in the U.S. and fundraised. And looking back, what we see is God used those relationships we developed those 5-6 years in Indianapolis to accelerate our path over here. And then in hindsight, one of the cool stories, just a testimony of God's goodness and my stupidity. You know, we lived in Avon there. And when we were selling our house to move over here, we had an open house, and our realtor told us, hey, your neighbors across the street want to come over and see it. You know, you kind of, when there's an open house, neighbors are always like, what's their house like?
Always.
Our neighbors trying to get the cookies. Came over, and they were shocked. They walked in my office and in my house, and they're shocked. And they were like, what's all this about? Well, when they saw the map of Romania and Romanians parking only, they went, we're Romanian.
Wow.
I didn't know this. This is how bad of be a good neighbor thing. That's how bad I am at this. Like, I didn't know they were Romanian. They lived across the street from us for 2 years. And so it was just for me, it was a number one, yeah, it was like a gut check. Like, you want to be a missionary, and here you are. You got an opportunity this whole time, right?
Yeah.
You love Romania so much, and you don't even know your neighbors. And at the same time, it was just like, it was that bit for me personally, but it was also just super encouraging, going like, we're on the right track here.
Yeah.
God used that time to accelerate the fulfillment of it. And so I think one of the principles, when I look back on it, is I still shared the vision. When I stopped sharing it with people, that's where I think it got dangerous in a way, when I stopped speaking it.
Yeah.
And so the fact that I had shared it and spoken it with so many people, they were able to help me in that time recognize the timing. And they were bought in on the vision. It wasn't shocking. When we said we're selling everything, moving to Romania, people were like, it's about time.
Yeah.
Even my wife's employer, she was at Sheltering Wings out in Danville.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And she said in her interview, we were fresh out of college, but when she was interviewing, they said, where do you want to be in 5 years? And she said, well, honestly, we want to be in Romania. And when my wife told me this after the interview, I was like, oh, you shouldn't have said that. It's not going to help you get the job. And yet when she told her boss there, it was time, she said, well, yeah, it is. It's been almost exactly 5 years. So when she left, it was almost exactly 5 years. So yeah, it's time for Romania. And so, the Sheltered Wings community supported in so many ways as well. So I think the number one thing for me was to still share it with other people, even when it's not even when it feels impossible for you.
And I think the individualistic kind of culture that has been, the West for the last, 20 plus years or so, we lose, even in church circles and faith communities, lose that communal side of those things.
Yes.
Right? That my calling, my passions, my skills and abilities aren't just for me to be satisfied, right? But it's to benefit community. And people see that. They're like, hey, man, I've noticed this. I've noticed that you've really got this thing. You've really got this passion. You've really got these skills. You've got a great idea, and the world needs it. And those little nudges, I've benefited so much from that in the last 5 years of people, when it was finally time to take, people were like, it's about time. It's about time you do this. It's about time you leave the nest here. It's about time you go start this thing or whatever it might be. It's about time you say yes to that leadership role. It's about time you volunteer in this capacity or whatever. And I love that reminder and encouragement from your story. Ryan, when you guys went to Romania though, and kind of what you're doing now, you guys have done some things that aren't always the traditional get a missionaries agency kind of route. Could you just talk a little bit about how you ended up doing what you're doing now with Agency Boon and Good Bureau and the idea behind that? Because I think it creates a lot of imagination around a different way to do whole life as mission. And whether that's stateside or abroad, I think there's principles that we can pick up from your story on that.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good way of saying it. One of the things I didn't share is during those years from when we came on a missions trip with my dad in 17, when I came over by myself, I said I'd been here about 5 times. Part of that was my family almost moved here. My dad had a strong desire to give up everything, his dream job, his federal pension, all that stuff, to move over here to do good and help people. And as part of that, I think he was too proud to fundraise. He grew up pretty poor. And so the idea of asking people for money support was a real challenge for him. And so he would talk about this idea of doing something here in Romania that would make it financially self-sustainable. And at the time, I didn't know a terminology or anything like that. I just knew that planted this seed that you could do that. So I went to school, Bible school, at Assemblies of God Bible School, and started sharing that. I want to move to Romania, but I want to do something so I don't always have to fundraise and make it. I don't think I knew self-sustaining at the time, but just that was the idea. And I would share that. And I had one of the high up leaders of the Assemblies of God World Mission had come through and the Bible school, and I got a chance to meet with him one-on-one. I shared this vision, and he's like, and the essence of what I took away was, that's not biblical, and it's not something that we're going to do, because it's biblical to fundraise. It's the normal way. It's and so I was really discouraged by that, but I also knew, okay, I talked to advisors and mentors about it and pastors, and really it was like, do you want to go and stay inside the system and try to change it, or do you want to go outside and trailblaze a new way? And I'm an outside guy by nature. And so that's why we started our own nonprofit, because we wanted to be able to have the freedom to, number one, do what God calls to do. Number two, not be put in a box, because, when you're a missionary and when you're from a specific denomination, there's a lot of preconceived notions and experiences that people have had with people from the denomination and group. So we didn't want to come under that necessarily. And we knew we wanted to do something in the area that was sustainable, and business was a really interesting way to do that. And at school, I learned the term social entrepreneurship. When I heard that, I was like, bingo. And I realized that I'm an entrepreneur since I was a kid, was selling stuff. I never thought of that. Yeah. So I gravitated towards the business department at the school. I loved the business classes and things like that. So yeah, moving over here, we knew, people started, what are you going to do? Oh, man, I don't know. I just know God called me to be here. So we started thinking, what do we want to do? And people said, well, what makes you kind of pound your fist on the table with holy anger, type of question. I said, well, the area of human trafficking and doing something about it to prevent it, like shelters and rescue, all these things are great and needed, but how do we strategically solve it in a way that prevents it from happening in the first place? And so that was our desire. We shared with our friends and family. We know we're being obedient, calling we have to move to Romania and live here, and we want to do something in the area of human trafficking prevention. So when we moved here, we started pretty quickly a nonprofit here in Romania, focused on that issue of creating a social movement to prevent human trafficking. And then we started, as part of that, Agency Boon. At the time, it was a different name. It was A Liberare Design, a horrible name to sell services into America, but it was the name of our Romanian nonprofit. Yep. And we kind of sold kind of our side hustle to fund our nonprofit. Yeah. So we were a hybrid organization because at the time it was really hard to fundraise for prevention of human trafficking work here in Romania. And we started the business, and that's been a huge avenue. And over the years, I've realized it's not just to make money. Sometimes great, being self-sustainable, the business to fund things, okay. But the business itself gets to do so much good in the lives of our team and the lives of the contractors we bring in our customers' lives we get to collaborate with, and the work that they do is amazing. So God's just used business to be this phenomenal conduit to advance his kingdom globally and historically, we see in scripture. And we get to partner with that here in Romania. We've been very blessed to kind of have the opportunity to do new and innovative things, at least in our sphere, and hopefully see more and more of that in the future for others.
Wow. What led to some of the pain points too with Good Bureau and bringing that? So you have Agency Boon is going. You guys were doing a lot of human trafficking prevention work. You've now are living. I mean, you've been there now for like 10 years, right? So somewhere around there. So talk about this Good Bureau idea and investing in leaders of those in Romania that are seeking to do something new and pioneering. I mean, that's so in your DNA. That's so in your story. I mean, we've talked through these things before. Like that is a core part of who you are and how you operate. Talk about that and the pain points that you saw, because I think a lot of the times, so much of the life of Jesus, but so much of how we need to posture and walk is we need to see what's actually happening around us. Yeah. And I think sometimes when we're in different cultures, it's like, oh, we have to take that posture because this is new, right? And we forget to do it in our backyard. So what were you seeing when it came to kind of leaders and investing in them that have this entrepreneurial idea, and how did that kind of get Good Bureau kind of going and moving?
Yeah, that's great. As an American living in Romania, I always wanted to empower Romanian leaders to bring the change. Yeah. That was behind starting the anti-trafficking organization, I tried to find other Romanian leaders that wanted to do it, and I wanted to do it with them. We just came to a point that it wasn't working. We knew we needed to get it started, and we knew we could hand it off in the future. And so that's what we ended up doing. We handed over that organization to a strong Romanian leader who has taken it and done amazing things with it.
That's awesome.
And she's incredible. And it was at that time, as part of that, as we looked at how do we have this impact, how do we actually see trafficking reduced in this country? Well, it's a result of so many other factors. So we need to address education, employment, job opportunities, discrimination. There's all of these factors that result in human trafficking. And so we realize that we don't need to do all those things. We need to help other leaders already doing that type of work or that want to do that. Yeah. So Good Bureau kind of came out of my own experience of a young person with a kind of an innovative out there idea in those initial early stages, in the first few years of a startup in the nonprofit or social entrepreneurship stage. You feel very vulnerable because you have this vision, you have this idea, and it's not proven. And especially in Romania, where the nonprofit financing does not come from individual donors as much, it's developing, but the most of it comes from CSR, corporate social responsibility, so companies that want to contribute, and then European funds or like grants. So, and basically it's really hard to get any financing unless you have about 3 or 4 years of experience under your belt. So it's like, how do you get that startup capital? And not just financial capital, but relationship capital, which is arguably more important in Romanian society. So we saw Good Bureau as it's not something we need to do, but how do we invest and empower other leaders that we don't have to grow some big organization? I've always wanted to stay really small, nimble, strategic, and maybe a little more catalytic, right? Than just kind of having our own empire. Right. Because I think that was the way of missions in the past. We saw foreigners come in, build something. When they leave, it kind of doesn't continue. It's rare to continue. So we want to do something that was a bit more long lasting and transformative. So Good Bureau, exists to invest in local leaders here in Romania that are doing amazing, good work through a nonprofit or a business. We have a 1-year accelerator program that is really a community where we try to invest in them and their leadership abilities, leading themselves and leading others. Offer them a small monthly stipend to help them financially, ongoing coaching. And the core of it is really this community that they can participate in much more than the 1 year. And so our dream is that, 10 years from now, we have 100 plus leaders across the country that all have this desire to do good. And they're interconnected and they're encouraging each other. And then they're turning around and investing in new leaders to help them accelerate the impact that they're having.
Ryan, that is absolutely incredible. I love that idea that you shared of just giving away leadership. I think that's what we see in Jesus' leadership. And so as you think about the last 5 years of that, of giving away leadership, of investing in leaders, building into them in the country of Romania, what has been a pivotal moment for you in that season of leadership where you've not been building this big empire, but you've really been focused on giving other people leadership, responsibility, accountability? What's been a defining moment in that for you?
That's a good question. I think for me, the biggest transformation myself and the moment there is when I realize I am pouring out so much, but I'm not taking care of myself.
Wow.
I'm finding my identity in my work and what I can do for God. And I have all these layers that make it even more so, number one, when you just move somewhere for a purpose, your whole mindset is for that purpose. And so this, not just even work-life balance, but I just have poured everything out and I didn't pour back in. I didn't keep a reserve in a way. And that comes between me and God. And so that just, self-care or whatever you want to call it has been a big one. And one of the memories that comes to my mind to share, and I don't like talking about this, but, I got invited to an event and a giving event and here in Romania and got a chance to make some sponsorships and support some local ministries here, which is really cool and encouraging. And I gave some money, and it wasn't a ton of money, but like $2,500, right? And I was so excited to be able to give it an awesome one. And I'm driving home and God's like, see how joyful you were to give that money? And like, oh yeah, like I love that. And he's like, remember that vacation you took 2 months ago with your family and you struggled to invest half of that amount into your vacation?
Yeah.
And I genuinely felt guilty about it. I took my family down to this beautiful resort in Bulgaria. And it was the most money I've ever spent on a vacation. Like I said, it was about $1,200 or something like that. And it was an all-inclusive, beautiful resort. And it literally, I had people around me when encouraging me to book it and do it. Like, you should do it. It'd be so nice for you guys. And I struggled to do that. Part of it's that missionary mindset. I'm a recovering missionary.
Yes.
Is a piece of it. The other is and so God was like, I want you to invest in yourself.
Yes.
With the same vigor and the same desire you have to invest in other people.
Yeah.
And that's a real struggle for me. And I think part of it is just not feeling worthy. I'm a big guy. I grew up, I was made fun of a lot as a kid. That was part of the reason for depression in 6th grade. And I struggle to see the value in myself. And yet I can so easily see it in others. And so I've had to submit that and lay that before God and go, I need to see myself like you see me, God, which is completely different than the way others see me.
It truly is. And it's such a journey. And every leader listening out there, Ryan, talking about self-care, like, I would encourage you to do what you need to do to take care of yourself as a leader.
Yeah. And I think that there's sometimes people are like this idea of, Justin Masterson was talking about this at our event on this past week at the time of the recording here, about the different self-care. We sometimes feel like, that's off-putting, but like taking care of yourself, investing in yourself, however you need to say that, because I think there is so much there for very missionally minded leaders that we can displace our identity into what we are doing, and in that our worth and our value and the love that we receive from others or from God just comes from the outputs that we can generate and create. And, as someone who has that as kind of a core motivation as well, like, there has been a lot of undoing and deconstructing of how I see myself. And that is, I think, for missionally minded leaders, I think it is very common. I think for the missionally, I don't care your job title, stay-at-home parent, lead pastor, overseas business owner, whatever it might mean, I think there is so much right in there. And Ryan, I so appreciate your vulnerability and transparency to share that, because I think, the last few years as well have just exposed that, but also compounded that. And I think that threshold of refreshment and renewal, like, there's got to be new ways that we go about it. There's got to be new ways that we structure our work. There's new rhythms that, this rule of life stuff, we've been teaching on this, and I'm trying to apply it in my own life. And what are those, bi-weekly, monthly, annual, things to just refresh, reconnect with people who don't exhaust you, right? Things that give you life, a vacation, all that kind of stuff. And so, by no means do we just want to like elevate ourselves, but also, C.S. Lewis says this, what is around humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less often, right? So it's not, it's still look in the mirror correctly, because you're made and created in the image of God. And I'm getting a little preachy here, but
I love it. That's good.
But Ryan, I just so appreciate that is such a good word for so many people who are living on mission, that they're trying to give it all away. They're trying to steward it well, but stewarding it is also yourself, your family, friendships near you, those daily, monthly, weekly, annual rhythms. That's so really good, man. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Ryan. So Ryan, as we start to head toward the close of our conversation, man, this has been so good. I feel like we could go for hours, but to start to kind of wrap us up, one of the things we love to ask all of our guests, what's a book, what's a podcast, what's some resource that you've been consuming lately that you think would be really valuable for our leaders and our listeners to check out?
The first thing that comes to my mind is an app that I've been using. I know everybody, you kind of have app overload and all that, but I've really enjoyed an app called Growth Day. It's by Brendan Burchard. He's got, like a personal development, personal growth guru. But that app has really helped me. It has it's called the Daily Fire, short 10-minute message every day. That has been a lifesaver for me in many ways in this last season, because it helps build in those rhythms. And the thing I love about it is he has a daily, weekly, and monthly assessment you can take on your life.
Wow.
And so you can go in there and do that each day. That has been really helpful for me in this season, just to to have something consistent, even if my scores were horrible on many days. It's like, at least I'm recognizing it, and I do want to grow. I'm going to come out of this season, because it's definitely been a valley season for me over the last 2+ years, and I'm getting better, but it's been a deep one. And so it's an uphill battle, uphill climb to get out of it. And, that has been incredibly helpful for me. And the other tip I'll give, just because I know there's a lot of listeners that are believers, I haven't shared this much, but I bought a Bible, one of those journaling Bibles with plenty of margins, and I'm just going through it as a gift for my son when he's 18. And so in a season where I honestly didn't want to dive into scripture for myself, I was doing it for him, which was more motivating. It was like I was kind of tricking myself, but it also, because I like to give gifts, and I'm like, this will be meaningful. And again, it's what I wish I would have had from my dad when he passed away when I was 18. But I want to hand this to him full of my notes, thoughts, scripture, what it meant to me. And so that's another little hack I've been doing. And I'm having more of a desire for myself in it. But it was a rhythm I could do for somebody else when I wasn't willing to do it for myself.
That's good,
wow.
man.
That's well, yeah.
All right. So all the parents here are feeling like, okay,
next
that's
level,
a real practical thing that
I'm
I
gonna
could
be
be
on
doing.
Amazon on my way home, ordering one.
That's the benefit to only having one kid.
That's good.
That's true, and that's the first app recommendation we've had.
I know.
On the show. I love that.
I appreciate that.
That's really good.
I'm kind of not surprised from Ryan, to be quite honest with you. But Ryan, how can people find you? How can they get involved with some of the things that you're doing? I mean, you guys are doing so much incredible work. There might be people who want to give something to Good Bureau. You might need some, digital marketing. You might need a website. Agency Boon is doing good work all over the place, and they're set up to handle that virtually and all those kinds of things. So how do people find those things? How do people find you on the internet? And we'll be sure to link to the stuff in the show notes too.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Yeah. Goodbureau.ro. Our website is a Romanian domain, but it's an English website. Goodbureau.ro is a great way to find us there. And we do have a nonprofit in the States that's connected for a donation, so people can donate and get a tax write-off, all that kind of stuff. And then with Agency Boon, it's Agency Boon, B-O-O-N, which is an English word that means a timely gift or blessing, but it also is the pronunciation of the word good in Romanian. And they can find us there. Our team specializes in story brand marketing framework, so we can help people clarify their message and then get a story branded website. And we are blessed with a great team here in Romania and team members in the States. Actually, our account manager, Mallory, is in Indianapolis, and she works with all of our clients kind of, face-to-face on Zoom. We would love to partner with any organization in that area. That'd be a blessing.
That's awesome.
I love that. Well, we just want to say thanks, Ryan, and thanks for everyone tuning into this episode of the 4 Everyday Leaders podcast by Wayfinders. We hope it helps you lead in the everyday spaces and moments of life.
Yeah, and you can continue to join the journey of the 4 Everyday Leaders podcast by Wayfinders by subscribing to the show on Apple Podcast, Anchor, Spotify, and YouTube. You can also leave a review and a rating to help other leaders find this incredible content. Ryan, dude, thanks for hopping on.
Absolutely.
Thanks for jumping into the conversation. This was so encouraging.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate the opportunity. It means a lot.
Absolutely. Have a great day, man.
Thanks.